Okay, welcome to another episode of Nerd Paints. Today we are going to paint Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt, the vile gangster, or in the words of Han Solo, that slimy piece of worm-ridden filth. Okay, I'm pretty excited for this one. To be honest, I'm really excited for Jabba's Realm, this expansion set. There's some really cool figures and new cards and everything. But anyway, we'll talk about that as we go, but let's just go ahead and dive in. So to start out, I went ahead and just filled in all the cracks with green stuff. But what I want to do is add a little bit to his eyes. So I was looking at some of the pictures of Jabba the Hutt and went back to Return of the Jedi and watched Jabba the Hutt. And anyway, I love what Fantasy Flights has done to this model, and I think it's a really cool model, but I don't want the eyes to be as wide. So no problem, easy to fix. I'm just going to add a little bit of green stuff into the eyes and just kind of close them up a little bit. But to start out, here's what I ended up doing. So I ended up adding some green stuff around the cracks of Jabba the Hutt. Just kind of fill these in. Now, what you're going to want to do is after you fill these in, you're going to want to let it dry for probably a good 24 hours. That's usually what I do. Just make sure it's completely hardened. But I'll take a toothpick here, just kind of help rub in the green stuff. So just use your finger, just kind of work it in, and you can use the toothpick to just kind of work out some of the excess green stuff, and then you can also use it to kind of trace any detailed lines and so forth. But pretty easy. It just takes a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of practice. It's not too hard though, to be honest. But again, just use your toothpick to trace any detailed lines and get any excess green stuff off. Just like that. And then once that's done, I'm just going to take a little bit, like I said, and we're just going to put a little bit underneath his eyelids. You don't need very much. Just pull out just a teeny, just kind of unroll or pull out just a little bit of green stuff. Roll it up a little bit just to thin it. And then I'm just going to line it up underneath his eyelid. And then just kind of press it in. Use a toothpick, just kind of press that in underneath his eyelid. This will give him just kind of more of a serious look on his face, I think. This part's optional. You don't have to do this. It's just something that I wanted to do. And then again, use a toothpick just to press that up underneath his eyelid. You want to make sure it's in there pretty firmly. No loose cracks, I guess, between the green stuff and his eyelid. Just kind of press it in. And we'll do the same thing underneath. We're just going to press that up. Looks good. And I'll do the same thing with the other eye. This will help kind of give him a little bit of a glare look. Same thing. Just use your toothpick to press that up there. Rip off the excess amount off the side. And just kind of press that through. Like I said, this part's not hard to do. It's pretty easy. Again, this part is optional. You don't even have to fill in the cracks if you don't want to. It's just something that I did. But after you're done, give it about 24 hours to let dry. But when we're done, once it's dry, then we're going to prime it. I'm going to use two different primes, actually. I'm going to use black for the base. I haven't glued that on yet. So I'm going to use a black prime for the base. And I'm going to use a white prime for Jabba himself. So with Jabba, I'm going to end up using 2 different primes. And the reason why is I want to paint kind of some lighter tones into his belly, some flesh tones, black on his back, or not black, I'm sorry, green on his back. Once he's primed, I'm now going to go and start with Kislev Flesh, and I'm going to dry brush this on. So I'm going to just dry brush this around his face, you know, underneath his chin, on his belly, underneath his tail, and just kind of brush that through. So I'm going to use just kind of a large dry brush. I'm going to go straight from the bottle. No water, don't add any water or anything. Get a napkin if you need to, so that way you can brush off any excess. And you'll notice I'm just going straight from the bottle. Get a little bit on the tip of my brush, just kind of wipe off any excess, and I'm just going to start brushing that on. And again, just above on his face, around his eyes. You can fill in all the cracks on his face itself. The belly, I'm going to leave those white cracks. I want to fill those in with Kislev Flesh. I'm going to use a shade later to fill in those cracks. But again, underneath his tail, so I'm going to brush that on. And fill in the cracks underneath his tail as well. Mainly just the belly, we're going to leave those white cracks alone. So now I want to mount this onto a plastic, just kind of a paper cup or a plastic cup. I'm just using ticky tack. We're going to take some Castellan green, and now we're just going to brush that over the rest of them. I'm pretty excited for Jabba the Hutt. When I first saw him, I was a little bit skeptical, I'm not going to lie. You know, I saw that he only has 2 speed, which, you know, makes sense. It's kind of a big worm. And he's not that much of a fighter, but I don't think he should be. Just my opinion, I mean, look at his abilities. I mean, he can just sit in the corner. You know, I'm going to use a number 4 brush, but you know, you bring him on the board and just kind of keep him away from the rebels. And if you look on there, I mean, he can make other figures focused, any friendly figure. I mean, imagine if you have a Rancor on there. And you don't have to be in line of sight with Jabba. You can just make him focused and help him recover 2 damage. It's pretty cool. And he only costs 6, which is also pretty amazing. And with his executive order, again, he doesn't have to have anyone in line of sight. You can just pick anyone on the board and have them interrupt to perform an additional attack. So I'm going to put a little bit of green paint around the front here. Like I said, just kind of brush it through. You notice I started with a dry brush and I just kind of switched over to a regular brush. And just to make sure I get all the cracks, get a little more detailed area between the flesh and the green areas. But now that we're done with that, I'm going to switch back to Kislev Flesh. I've got just a little bit of water on the tip of my brush. And just kind of touch up some of the flesh areas. If I got any green anywhere where I don't want, or this middle area, I don't want it to be so uniform, that green stripe going across. So I'm going to break it up a little bit with some flesh. So I'm going to take some Kislev Flesh, and I'm going to mix in some of the green. Same green we've been using, Castellan green. And maybe 3-to-1 ratio, actually. 3 Kislev Flesh to 1 green. I'm going to use this just kind of fan around the blend in the edges. I don't like the sharp edges between the flesh and the green. So I'm just going to use this to blend the edges. Just go around all throughout the whole model, underneath his tail, on top of his head, just everywhere, and just blend that in. If you want, you can add a little bit of highlight with this, but mainly just focus between the flesh and the green, just to kind of blend those in. I might add just a little bit on his nose, kind of underneath, a little bit on his face. Not a lot, because I want his face to mainly be that flesh color. But you can add some underneath his chin just to darken that up a little bit, just to enhance those shadows. And then underneath his belly as well. Okay, that looks good. Now we're going to move on. For this next part, I'm going to take some Cadian Fleshtone, mix it in with some Kislev flesh. We're going to do about a 50-50, about an equal amount of both. Let's just add in a little bit of pink. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. This will be a 2 for the size that I'm using. And with this, I'm just going to add a little bit on his chin, just here and there on his face, just to help add a little bit of pink to the flesh tone. Maybe a little bit around his cheeks. I mean, honestly, it's wherever you want to put this, just to add in a little bit of a different color to his face. Into that flesh color. But I'm going to take some Bugman's Glow next, and I'm going to dry brush this on. Just get a little bit on your brush, not a lot, because I don't want it to cake on. I'm just going to put a little bit on his belly. Mainly the last, or the bottom, I don't know, 3/4 of his belly. I'm going to put some underneath his tail as well, so take that off the cup. I'm going to go back to Kislev flesh, and I'm just going to do some little touch-ups. I'm going to break up that middle green area a little bit more. Just kind of on the top of the fold, right in the center area. And you notice I'm just kind of dabbing it on. I'm not brushing it on because I don't want it, I just want it to be kind of chaotic. So I'm just going to dab on here and there and just to break this up again. Okay. I'm going to switch to Death World Forest, and I'm going to use my dry brush again. I want to add on just some different tones onto his, I don't want it to be one solid tone of green, so I'm going to add on some of this onto the top of his tail just to add some highlights, or to start adding on some highlights on the top of his head. And then if you want to add it randomly, just different spots on him, then that will work as well. Might put some on top of his hands and his arms. Again, just to break up that original green color that we used. I'm going to now switch to Nurgling green. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm going to put a little bit on the brush. And same thing, I'm going to add this on top of where the highlighted areas are going to be. So again, on top of his tail. Might put some on his hands, on top of his arms. Just kind of fan it on top of his head. Again, just some of the highlighted areas. This will add a little bit more And it'll make him a little more interesting instead of just one solid green. I'm now going to add some Still Legion Drab. I don't have a lot on my brush. It doesn't take very much, but I'm going to dry brush a little bit of this on as well, just to mix in a little bit of brown. It's kind of a greenish brown. As you dry brush that on, it really just kind of blends in. Maybe on the front of on the inside of his tail. Just random places, just to kind of help add a little bit of color to it, or a different color. I'm going to go back to Deathworld Forest. And now I am going to use a regular brush because I want to make this, I want to be a little more detailed with this. So I'm just going to brush on just in these random areas. I don't want to brush inside of the cracks, so just kind of avoid the cracks, but just add some different, just add this to some random places on his back and on his head, back of his neck. I'm mostly staying close to the highlighted areas with this. Might even add a little bit on his arm, just to add in a little bit of different green color to his arms. Maybe on top of his hands a little bit. I mean, really anywhere you want to introduce this color. I might add a little bit on top of his head. Might add in just a little bit of Elysian green, just to add a little bit of a brighter green. This I'm going to just paint the, I don't know what you call those little dimples that are poking out. Maybe along the edges here, just to add a little bit of a brighter green between where this flesh meets the green. And again, I don't have a lot of my brush, just kind of fanning it on through this area. Wipe off any excess that you might have. Now on the inside of his tail, I'm pulling up, so I'm kind of fanning upward. I'm not doing any downward strokes. I'm starting to kind of at the base and just kind of pulling it up. That'll help feather it. Might add on just a little bit on top of his, right around where his belly meets the green. Just kind of fan that in a little bit. Now I'm going to switch back to a dry brush with the same Elysian green, and then I might just fan a little bit on top, just in the highlighted areas. Just kind of dry brush here and there. Alright, Jabba's looking pretty good so far. I like these tones that we're using. So now I'm going to switch back to Bugman's Glow. And I'm just going to add in a little bit of water with Bugman's Glow. And then just with the regular brush, I'm going to use this to paint his eyes. So go and just paint his eyes. Don't worry if you get the center of where his pupil is. But I'm just going to paint the inside here. And if you mess up or if you accidentally get any on his eyelids, then just go back to Kislev Flesh and just kind of touch it up a little bit. But I'm going to now switch to Abaddon Black, and I'm going to use this to paint the inside of his pupils. Again, if you mess up, just go back to the color that you were using. Kislev Flesh for his eyelids. Bugman's Glow for his eyes. I'm going to paint his tongue, so I'm going to take some Mephiston Red and some Bugman's Glow. 50-50. Just mix those two together. I want to make it kind of a little bit of a purplish red, so I'm going to add some Thunderhawk Blue. Not a lot, just a little bit. Just to give it kind of a reddish purplish color. And I'm just going to paint kind of the inside of his mouth. Okay. Again, go back to Bugman's Glow. And I might add on, just kind of looking at this, I might add on a little bit of Bugman's Glow just around in his belly area where we dry brushed it on. Just kind of retouch that up and maybe just fan a little bit towards the bottom. Keeping a lot of the white cracks still white. Now I'm going to use Seraphim Sepia on this. I'm going to use to trace along the different cracks and just kind of fill those in with Seraphim Sepia. Just kind of blend it in with the Bugman's Glow, fill in those cracks. Maybe a little bit underneath his creases. That'll help bring in a little bit of shadow. And then on his tail, I'm kind of fanning upward to help fan it, or to help blend it in better. I'm not necessarily going up and down strokes as much, I'm kind of pulling it upward. And this kind of helps blends it in. I'm going to take some Reikland Fleshshade. And just put some here and there, almost randomly on his face, but I'm going to put some above his eyelids. Maybe around his nose, underneath his eyelids. Again, just to kind of help bring in those shadowed areas. I'm going to add some to his eyes. Maybe some on his belly where we did the Bugman's Glow to help deepen that a little bit. It's more towards the bottom of the belly. And then underneath his tail. Underneath his tail, I'm going to use kind of a little bit more underneath his tail just to make sure that gets a little bit of a deeper color. You can use this to help kind of blend a little bit between the green and the flesh. This is looking pretty good. I'm going to put a little bit on his cheeks, underneath his chin. Maybe a little bit above his eyes where the flesh kind of meets the green, and also above his eyelids. I don't want to go over all of the flesh tone areas because I don't want it to be red all over. Okay, it looks good. I'm going to let this dry, but I'm going to just gently place it on top of the base. Don't smash it down. Just enough to where it sticks on the base. Just set it aside and we're going to let that dry. And once that's dry, we're going to now take some Camoshade and just kind of add some Camoshade on the green areas. And with this, I'm going to cover the majority of the green area. Along his back, underneath his arms, on his arms, his head. Almost everywhere where there's green, I'm going to use Camoshade for this step. I'm going to add some on top of his arms, like I said. Then while it's still wet, we're going to switch back and forth between Biel-Tan green, Athonian Camoshade, and Waywatcher's green, the Glaze. I'm going to first start with Biel-Tan green, and again, this is while he's still wet. I'm going to add some to the top of him. The reason why I'm doing this while it's wet is because it'll help kind of naturally blend and distribute a little bit while it's wet, but just kind of fan it around. I'm mainly doing this on the top area, maybe a little bit on the back, but mainly the top area of where some of those highlights are. Not a lot, might add just a little bit on his arms, underneath his arms. I'm going to switch to Waywatcher's green. This is a glaze, so it's pretty bright, so I'm going to add this again on some of the more highlighted areas on top of him. And again, I'm doing this while he's still wet. I'm not waiting for it to dry. Add some on the back of his head, on the top of his head. Might add a little bit of glaze to around the inside of his tail. Again, you notice I'm kind of adding to the bottom, and then I'm just going to kind of pull it up. Might add just a little bit on his chin. Just more where it is underneath his mouth. Here I'm just adding just a little bit. Just add a little bit of a green. A little bit of that bright green on him. Maybe just a little bit on his belly off to the side. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Maybe just a little bit underneath his belly. Okay. Now we're going to go back to Athonian Camoshade. Might add just a little bit underneath his chin. Kind of want to make that just a little bit darker. So I'm going to add that there. I mean, you can add this, I'm adding it in the creases. I mean, if you want to, it's really up to you on this one. I personally am just kind of avoiding a lot of the flesh tone again. You don't want to turn brown, green around the flesh, or on all the flesh tone, but I might add a little bit underneath his eyes. Maybe just a teeny bit in his eyelids, just inside that fold. Okay, now that we've got the shades done, for now, I'm gonna let them dry. And once he's dry, we're now gonna switch to some additional highlights. I'm gonna switch to Scrag Brown. And this I'm gonna use for his eyes. But I'm gonna use it kind of in the center of his eyes. Maybe keep the corners with that Bugman's glow. I'm going to switch to some Kislev flesh. Add in a little bit of water. I'm going to highlight the top of his eyes. Maybe his eyelids or the brow above his eyes. Just kind of where it protrudes, those little bumps. Little bumps between his eyes. Below his eyelids, I might add a little bit on just kind of around his mouth. And then a little bit above his mouth in the corners. Then I might add just a little bit on top of the folds, just in some small areas. And then a little bit on his belly, kind of in that flesh area. Okay, I'm going to take some Ogryn Camo. I'm going to use this to highlight the bumps on his back. Just throughout those green areas, the bumps that you see that are poking out. You know, another awesome thing with Jabba's realm that I really like is the Nemesis class deck. And with the class deck, I mean, unless I'm playing this wrong, you can ultimately have up to 3 villains on the board, depending on, you know, how much experience you've used to spend on different cards, threat points that you have to be able to spend. With the same green, I'm gonna just add some randomly throughout, you know, throughout his back, avoiding the cracks. Then I'm going to go back to some Athonian Camoshade and just kind of help blend in those highlighted areas that I just added. I don't want to cover them completely, just kind of around the edges, just randomly here and there, just to help blend those in. Maybe get some of these darker areas if you want to reapply additional layers to some of the darker areas underneath his arms. Okay. I'm going to add in a little bit of brown, so I'm going to use Agrax Earthshade. Just want to introduce a little bit of this brown shade on his back, on top of his head, just some random areas. Nice thing about Jabba is, I mean, it can be random. I mean, some of these different areas, just to add some different tones. I think this just makes it a little more interesting. Might use a little of Agrax Earthshade on the inside of his eyes. Maybe just a little bit in the creases on his belly. I don't have a lot on my brush. I have hardly any, but I'm going to just use a little bit for, like I said, the creases on his belly, around his arms. I'm going to take some white scar and I'm going to use this on his eyes, just a teeny bit on the tip of your brush. I'm using a really small brush. Just want to get where the light might reflect on his eyes. So I'm going to put a little dot just kind of to the left of his eye, or to the left of his pupil. I'm going to do that on both eyes. Again, you don't want to lap, just go back and retouch that up if you mess up. I'm going to take a little bit of Screaming Skull. And with this, I'm going to use that to add a little bit of saliva coming down. So I'm just kind of dabbing it on, just drawing it on. I might add in a little bit on his nose. Kind of give it the impression that he has some snot coming out of his nose. Jabba, if you watch the movie, he's kind of a drooler. I think he drools a lot. So we're going to just add a little bit on the bottom of his mouth, maybe a little bit on the top of his lip. And with this, you can add as little as you want, or I wouldn't go overboard. Okay, I'm going to take some Abaddon Black. I'll use this for the center of his pupil. And once that part's done, I'm going to take some Ungor flesh. I'm going to use this just to highlight the top of his eyelids, maybe the top of his brow. And again, I'm taking this straight from the bottle. Maybe the bumps between his eyes. Or I guess on his forehead. Those bumps on his forehead. Might put a little bit above his mouth. Again, this is different highlighted areas. Okay, now we're done with that. We're gonna paint over the base, even though we primed it with black. I'm just gonna add a little bit of black paint to it. And with this, I'm using just Abaddon Black and just brush it on. Be careful not to cake it on in that center area that's gonna go up in Jabba. You wouldn't want too much paint on that to make it thicker than we need to. Now this part's optional. I don't like just solid black bases, so I'm gonna use a little bit of Leadbelcher, and I'm gonna put a little bit on the tip of my brush. I'm gonna dry brush it, almost make it look like he's on a metal black, kind of a black metal ground. So I'm gonna just dry brush this around the edges and just kind of on the top of the base. If you get too much, go back to black and maybe even dry brush black over it. Kind of gives an impression of, I don't know, some metal scratches in the floor or light reflecting on the metal floor. Something just to break this up so it's not just one solid black piece. But again, this is up to you. You can keep it black if you want. I'm going to go just kind of opposite direction just to make it look like some scratches. I'm going to take some super glue and now we're going to add Jabba. Don't squirt on a lot of glue. If you notice, I'm just putting it towards the top of the rim, so that way it doesn't ooze out underneath and get all over the model and make a mess. Might even take it off the cup and just add some pressure just to snap him on there. Now that he's on the base, I'm going to add just a few more highlights, but I'm going to start with Mechanicus Standard Gray. I'm going to use this for his tattoo on his arm. It's hard to see, but he does have just kind of a small tattoo on his arm, so we're just going to paint that with the gray. Last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take some Casandora yellow, and I'm going to add this to the inside of his tail. But again, with this, we're going to fan upward. So kind of start where the flesh begins and just kind of pull it up. This part's optional, you don't have to add that on there. but I think it just adds a little bit to it. I'm going to take some Waywatcher's green again. And they're just going to add a little bit more highlight on the top of his tail. Just want to bring out some of the different tones a little bit more with this. And then when you're done doing that, if you feel like you need to, you can take some Ogryn Camo again, which I'm going to do. And he's still wet. I'm okay with that. I'm going to take this and just re-highlight some of these bumps that are poking out. Now you notice I just have a little bit at the tip of my brush. And I'm just getting the tips of these little bumps that are poking out, just to re-highlight those or bring those back out. And then if you need to, I'm going to take some Castellan green. This is just for final touches. So I'm going to use this to, again, send some of these different bumps, creases on his back, and just kind of add a little bit more of this back into it. I'm not going overboard, just adding a little bit here and there. This will help kind of fan or blend in some of these other greens I added. I think that does it for Jabba. I think it looks pretty cool, but make sure you let them dry completely before you spray them with some lacquer to seal them. I'll post below what lacquer I personally use to seal them if you want to use the same kind. But thanks again for watching, and also be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you really want to show your support, you can also visit my Patreon page by clicking the link below. This will really help with producing additional videos more frequently, and by doing this, you can also be eligible to not only watch these videos before anyone else does, but you can be eligible to win some awesome prizes. My way of saying thanks to you. But thanks again for watching, and till next time, happy painting. Thanks.